Okay, so today we're going to be pouring up some impressions, and we're going to be making these models for working models. You could also use them for study models if you like, but today we're predominantly doing a working model. So when you get your impression, make sure that you rinse them thoroughly under the tap, because sometimes there's some residue of the sterilising agent in there, so give them a quick rinse and then flick out all the excess. I don't necessarily dry them completely because you like to have a little bit of moisture in there so it breaks up the surface tension, and then your stone is going to be able to flow around the impression really nicely for you. Now today we're going to be using stone, so when we're mixing up stone, it's 1 part water to 3 parts stone. So there's about enough water in here to mix up my 2 impressions. So, and we're using stone today because stone is a lot harder than plaster, and we want to have a nice hard surface for us to make our fabrications on. So when we're mixing, we want to mix it to a consistency of soft serve ice cream. That's usually the best consistency that you can get. Okay? Sometimes it's tempting to make it a little bit runnier. The problem is when you have it too runny, you'll find you'll have a weak mix and the teeth will break off really easily. And the other thing that happens is that you'll get a lot of air bubbles in your mould, and you don't want that to happen. It's going to take you time and energy to fill it in later, so it's just much better to have a good, nice, smooth, consistent mix. And the best way to describe it is really like soft serve ice cream. If you think it's a little bit runny, it's just a matter of adding some more powder. Okay, so here we go. That's what it should be looking like. Nice, smooth, consistently like that. You can use a mechanical mixer, but sometimes you'll go to laboratories where that's not available. So, you know, if you can learn how to mix it by hand, it's much better for you. So we're just going to give this a quick vibration. This is our vibrator here. So just for about 5 or 10 seconds, we'll just vibrate any extra air bubbles out of here. That should be enough. We're going to start with the upper impression. We're going to add the stone incrementally. So just from the most distal tooth, the posterior here, we're just going to vibrate it around. And I'm watching it as it moves around, and if I see any big air bubbles, I'm just going to use a Lacron to burst those little bubbles as they go. It's a matter of just watching it flow all the way around. Oops. And I always like to give it a little tap on the bowl as well, just to make sure it's all vibrated in there properly. Then you need to fill up the impression right to the top. If you don't fill it up to the top, when you invert it later on, what you'll find is that you might have a big air pocket stuck underneath, and you'll need to fill that in. Okay, so that's our upper. Exactly the same thing with our lower model. Flick out the excess moisture, and starting from the most distal tooth, vibrate it around to all the crowns of the teeth. So our next step is to make a little cow pat. That's going to be the base of our model. So we just drop a little bit down. You'll notice I'm just dropping it down. I'm not spreading it out. Just a little blob like that. That's all we need to do. Because when we invert our impression over the top, it will actually spread the stone out then. Okay, because it's quite heavy when it's loaded with this. So when we're inverting our impression, the tray handle is going to be parallel with the bench, because that then will mean that our occlusal plane is going to be level with the bench. It'll make more sense when we come to grinding later. So I'm going to just have a little crouch down, make sure my handle is parallel. Then using my plaster knife, I'm just going to run it around the edge, right along the edge of the tray, making sure I haven't got any excess that's left on the alginate or on the tray itself. That'll make it so much easier when we come to take the impression off. You'll notice at the back where the heels of the model are here that I've built it up on an angle. So around the facial surface, it's straight up and down, but at the heels, it's built out on an angle. When it comes to inverting your lower impression, make sure that you always clean out the tongue space, because otherwise the tray will become trapped and then there's a lot of digging out once it's set hard. Once again, I've got my tray handle is parallel to the bench, so that will mean when I take my impression off that the occlusal plane is going to be parallel with the bench as well. I'm just using my plaster knife to run it around and clean the sides. I'm going to build up those heels at the back there, and then in this tongue space I'm making sure I'm cleaning out just to the bottom of the tray. I'm not taking the material all the way out, still is a base there, but I've just cleaned to the bottom of the tray. Okay, so you can see here, this is where we're just running the knife to the bottom of the tray, meaning that we'll be able to get it out very easily. Because as you can imagine, when this starts to set and it hardens, it's going to be very difficult to take this off, and then you'll have a big area in the tongue space that you're going to have to remove by hand. Then it's just a case of cleaning your bowl.